So, hello everyone, and happy to have you all. This is our first live episode, so I'm glad to have the audience. And if you have any questions, always add them in the comments on YouTube or on LinkedIn. So, today we are honored to have Ronald. Ronald Mugisha has over 15 years of experience specializing in cybersecurity, management, and fraud risk mitigation within the financial services sector. His extensive career across diverse institutions has equipped him with the ability to address complex cybersecurity challenges and implement strategic solutions to mitigate fraud effectively. Currently, Ronald serves as the Cybersecurity Operations Center Project Manager at the Uganda Bankers Association, where he supports member banks in enhancing their cyber resilience and fraud prevention capabilities. Let's welcome Ronald. As actually joining me is Josephine Olok in the show. So, Ronald, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here. I've been looking forward to being a part of this. Yeah. And I'm excited to be here today. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're welcome, Ronald. Great to see you.
Thank you.
So, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into cybersecurity.
I'm basically, my name is Ronald Mugisha, 15 years experience thereabout. And for me, the cybersecurity journey was not intentional. Not how people plan, this is what I'm going to do and be in my life. Mine wasn't really that way. Because I studied BSc Economics and Computer Science. And I loved the economics part more than the computer science. Yeah, I really love that. And I always thought I'd be an economist, actually. That is something that I actually thought I would do. But the university I went to was very big on open source software. And they were big on Linux at the time. It was really all new, but there was this free open source software movement. And we were not using Windows, Microsoft products in that place. And because of that, you kept hearing things like security, you need to be cautious. And that is basically something that we started speaking from around that place, around that time. That was at Uganda Matters University in Nkozi. I mean, I got into the workplace. Luckily, I got a job in a microfinance then as a network administrator. Because I had the skill set, I'd also done my CCNA by that time, and there are not very many people doing CCNA. So I had a bit of the networking skill. I got into this workplace, and you take on responsibility of doing the basic things. Domain admin, you're doing configuring routers, switches, and you keep building the skill set around networking and security, along the way. And over time, as I grew in my career, I took on more responsibility in infrastructure and security. And it was just work, really, started from one bank to another. You take on responsibility, managing teams, but focusing a lot more on the security aspects. But also, at that time, I think security wasn't looked at the way it is looked at today. Today, there's a bit more segregation, between security and technology operations. But at the time, we didn't understand these concepts very well, but we were doing the work, and, with time, I took more interest. I started realizing that security is a big thing. Security is a big deal. Things like patching and vulnerability management. We don't understand why that was so critical and important, but we started understanding the value, of security, and started focusing a little more on that. And along the way, I've been lucky, to work with the UBA, the Uganda Bankers Association, and in that role, I work with basically all the banks, coordinating issues around cybersecurity and response to incidents. And it has opened up, um, a whole different world for me around the security space because there are so many skilled resources in all these different financial institutions, not just the banks, but also the PSPs, payment service providers, and payment systems operators that we engage with as partners. And for me, the my perspective of security now is, it's a lot broader. The engagement with different resources, looking at things from an industry vantage point of view is totally different than, when you compare to looking at security from an institutional perspective. So that is really my journey from the economics to where I'm at right now here. And of course, now there's also an angle of not just the cybersecurity, but the aspect of cybercrime, you know, prevention, detection, and then recovery, from incidents. So that's really, really my journey. It wasn't intentional, but here I am, and I'm happy to be in this space. Yeah, I'm really happy to be in this space. Yeah.
Thanks for the for that comprehensive profile. I have to I don't know if I'm conflicted, of course, but I have to acknowledge my interest. I worked with Ronald when we were at Equity Bank. That's where uh, we are well known to each other. I think at the time I worked with you. You were infrastructure and network manager, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, and of course, those days we used to do a lot of antivirus and all that stuff. And we used to do it, as you said, it was like we were ticking boxes, but the concept of cybersecurity wasn't so big by that stage. But
Mm.
thank you very much, Ronald, for honoring my request for you to come on our 50th anniversary, on our 50th podcast. It's really a real honor to have you. So, given the unique challenges and opportunities in the African tech, technical landscape, what strategies would you recommend for project managers to effectively develop and manage diverse teams and stakeholders across the different cultural and geographical contexts?
Um, uh, for project managers, really, project managers' primary role is coordination, and ensuring you deliver, on projects within budget, and the scope shouldn't change too much. It's really what you look at. You look at the project, you look at the cost and the scope. So in order to deliver, sorry, the time, the scope, and the cost, the time, scope, and cost, yeah. So in order to deliver on those three, there has to be a lot of stakeholder engagement. uh, as a project manager, you have to find a way. You have to understand your key stakeholders, map them out, understand their needs, understand what works for them, what doesn't work. You'll find one stakeholder doesn't want to be engaged, as often as others. You need to find a way of breaking those molds. So stakeholder engagement is really a big deal, and you have to put in the time. If you have the job and you don't have the stakeholder management skills, take a course. Yeah, there are lots of free courses, Udemy, Simply Learn. There are so many courses out there. You need to take a course and be able to engage stakeholders. And in that engagement, you need to understand the issues around diversity and culture. Because you'll have stakeholders who you're reporting to, and then you'll have stakeholders that you're working with, and stakeholders who are part of the team. And you may find one stakeholder, for example, doesn't work on Saturday because that's the day they pray. You need to find a way to cater to that kind of situation. I remember sometime there's a project we are working on, and we had a consultant who came in from South Africa. And I remember we were walking around the Serena. This was a very technical guy, but walking around the Serena Hotel. He was actually staying at the Serena Hotel, and walking him back. And we saw a man walking a dog. yeah, a Ugandan walking dog. It was in the evening, and this consultant was visibly disturbed, visibly. He was black South African, and I couldn't understand why he was disturbed. So I asked him, what's going on? And he said, during the apartheid, walking dogs was a job for black South Africans. So for him, seeing a black walking a dog was a trigger, you know. So if you can get to understand that there are certain things that trigger some of your stakeholders, then you find ways to manage them. And this was, for example, for this, I would say it was a cultural bias. I don't know if it was cultural. It was his experience anyway. It was his experience. So you can't write that off. And those are things that can affect a project. Because if he came to my home and he found maybe someone walking a dog, or if somebody walking a dog, he might affect the project, you know? So understanding, cultural biases, understanding your stakeholders is really key. Um, we also have to adopt new technology, of course, to make our work easier. I mean, today we are seated in three different locations, and other people are listening in from wherever they are, and different time zones. As a project manager, you need to be able to leverage, tools, do online meetings, use tools like Slack, tools that create dashboards. You have to learn how to use those. It's really the basics. Um, but you have to learn how to use the tools to be able to deliver. For me, it's really the stakeholder management and the tools, yeah, that PMs should look into across Africa, really. Thank you.
And in your current role, thanks for that answer. In your current role, I imagine you said you work with a lot of banks and a lot of
Mm.
financial service institutions. What are your stakeholders? Who are the stakeholders you're managing? Are they just the technical people within the banks, or are they also non-technical? Do you have perhaps regulatory type stakeholders? Can you just give us an idea of what who the stakeholders you're currently managing are, what they look like?
Yeah. So the landscape is really diverse. Yeah. Of course, we have the technical people in the banks, and the technical people are be speaking to the heads of business technology, the heads of IT, whatever role, whatever name is given to that role. And now, heads of security. And those are primary, those are key stakeholders. But we also have the executives, yeah, because the project, is an industry project. So the Uganda Bankers Association works for the banks. Yeah. So, the executives, all the CEOs are stakeholders, that need to be engaged and need to be on the same page. Everyone needs to understand the vision, why we are doing this, the project. So the other stakeholder group is, of course, the project sponsor, who would be the ED at UBA. You have partners, development partners who are funding aspects of the project, like FSD, that's financial sector deepening Uganda. You'll have stakeholders from a regulatory perspective, that's, Bank of Uganda, UCC, FIA. You have law enforcement who are interested in what are the banks doing, to improve their cybersecurity posture. You have academia. We have actually had quite of engagement, some bits of engagement with a number of engagements with different academia stakeholders who are very interested in what is happening in the cyberspace, in the financial services sector. Um, Yeah, so it's really diverse from the CEOs, the technical people. Of course, you also have the broader 19,000 plus UBA employees. Yeah, because at the end of the day, people are really our first line of defense in cybersecurity, and they are also stakeholders in this journey. I don't interface a lot with external customers. Yeah, but I imagine some other people do a lot more of that. So that's really what the stakeholder matrix or map looks like from my perspective. Yeah. Oh, and one
Wow,
of
that's
sorry, I
yeah.
was
Go
saying
ahead.
I was saying one of the things that I didn't mention about project managers is people need to understand the vision. Everyone needs to be aligned. What are your project objectives? And if you don't have that alignment or that clear understanding from all the stakeholders, then you're going to have so many questions along the way. maybe 6 months down the road and people asking, but where are we on this project? Where are we doing this? Is this still relevant? You know, because you could be on a project and the project is running 3 years, yeah, and people are asking, but this other country is at level 3. Where are we still on level 1? You know, so it's very important that there is buy-in and people understand the objectives of the project. It needs to be very clear to all stakeholders. Yeah.
Thank you for that answer. Thank you.
So, um, how can software developers in Africa effectively collaborate with infrastructure and security professionals to ensure overall security performance of software applications?
Software developers. So I think one thing that is very important is security needs to be, it's an integral part, of the software development process. And software developers need to involve security right from conception or design, even before writing any code. Security needs to be uh, a very key consideration. And I'll give you some examples. So I, for a couple of years, I have a friend and we have a technology company together, software development actually. But I'm not a software developer personally, but I'm a security person and he's the developer. And previously what would happen is you have, maybe you have a business opportunity, you have a solution that is required by a customer. You just do the scoping and then the developer does all the work. Yeah. And then you do the project management, you hand it over and everything runs well. But in about 2016, thereabout, 2015, 2014, 2015, we started doing some work in the payment space. So that's the time, mobile wallets were becoming a thing. And Payway, Pegasus, these are the big boys, in the space. And we started building solutions in that space. And we started realizing, oh, if you're a small tech company and you're going to have an integration with a bigger company, maybe MTN or Pegasus or True Africa, New Uganda, at the time, those are the aggregators we could work with. They had certain requirements, basic requirements from a security perspective. So whatever solution you're building, needed to align with that. So we started learning that security needs to be in design from things like, identity access management, very basic things. How do you maybe encrypt data at rest, uh, API security aspects. So security basically needs to be part of design, right from in a software development, as part of the software development life cycle. The other thing that needs to happen is really sharing knowledge, Software developers are usually very complex to work with. Yeah, if you work with them, they're usually complex. And also security people they may feel they know it all. Yeah. So bridging that gap between those two, I think the best thing is really sharing knowledge and communication. So for me, those are the two things that I really look at. There's be sharing, knowledge sharing and communication between the developers and the security people. But most importantly, security needs to be embedded right from the beginning of the design process of any software for, by the developers. Yeah, I don't know if that speaks to it.
Oh, for sure. And I speak with the background of software developer as a software developer, and I don't agree that we're difficult to work with. Anyway, yeah, but definitely that I do like that concept of security. You start uh you design first and then you make sure that your software has design incorporated at the very beginning. Um so we have new technology, and it's technology is of course is evolving so quickly. When you look at cloud computing, and cybersecurity, what would you say are the best practices for implementing and managing hybrid and multi-cloud environments?
This is a very diverse discussion. Yeah.
I think, yeah,
It's
you're supposed to know everything about
everything.
security. Yeah, it's like it's our 50th and podcast, so we're gonna ask you
Yes.
everything. I hope you're ready.
Yes, yes, I'm ready. I'm ready. Yeah.
Good.
So for cloud computing, I remember, I just want to take a step back, I remember about maybe like 10 years ago, 10 years back, I used to hear people talking about Vim and VMware, and I had no clue what they were talking about. But I'm someone who had been working in infrastructure, and security for some time. I had a clue, of course. I understood what they were talking about, but I didn't understand, the fundamentals around cloud computing. Yeah. And fast forward, 3, 5 years later, everyone is saying, oh, you don't need to have a data center to run, everything you're doing. You could just use AWS, or you could just use Google, or there are other cloud service providers locally, and everyone started playing catch up. You find a few skilled resources in the industry, and everyone is tapping into those. So that I just really wanted to paint a picture around that. So the things that we need to do, the best practices really is, number one, you have to have a strategy. You have to have a comprehensive cloud strategy. If you are doing, if you're co-locating maybe with one of the data centers and you have infrastructure within, and you have some of your services or applications running maybe in AWS, you need to have a strategy that speaks to whatever mix of the cloud computing environment that you're running. Um, you could have your own private cloud environment as an institution, but you could also be doing your backup in the cloud. Yeah, so you need to have a clear strategy on how you work with all of that. You need to understand how you're implementing security and maybe compliance within that environment. Things like encryption, things like identity management, things like access control. You need to be, you basically need to standardize around security that you're running in your cloud environment to ensure data security, of course, and compliance. So you need to have a strategy. There needs to be buy-in for the strategy. And then you also need to have to implement strong security and compliance protocols. You also need to have, you need to ensure, you're monitoring. There's unified monitoring and management, because with the cloud, you have different things that you need to have visibility into. Um, Workloads, performance, um, what does your RAM look like? What does your space look like? Um, what does your security look like? You don't want to be managing this from 3, 4 environments or using 3, 4 tools. So you need to basically have unified management. The other thing I'll probably think of is, I talked about, having on-prem and off-prem, or cloud, sorry, your private cloud and maybe a shared service out there. So you need to have uh, protocols or things around data migration and backup. Yeah, you need to have a very clear backup policy that you're working with. You need to understand, who is doing the backups, when are they being done, where are they hosted, um, in case you have any issues, with your environment. And this is not an advert, but you can also consider having local, using the local resources, the local cloud service providers, um, instead of having everything, out there. It's also good, to be able to rely on our local talent and to support. So I know, for example, there's an entity that has brought the Microsoft Azure stack locally into the country. And it's as good as, purchasing that service from, I don't know, some other third party, out there. So, but these are people whose office you can walk up to. Worst case scenario. Yeah. So these are things, we could look at around the cloud computing space. And there's a lot that is happening also in that space because I know for a fact that for the financial services sector, the banks, Bank of Uganda has issued some guidelines, and in those guidelines, they speak to getting approval before before you engage any cloud service provider. So you can see that if the regulator of the financial services sector is coming out to issue some guidelines and they're speaking to cloud computing, and our regulators don't usually move very fast. Yeah. So if they're coming out to issue some guidelines, around that, then it's an area that they have a keen interest in, and we need to understand. They basically want to do due diligence on the cloud service provider before you engage them, because there are issues around data protection and privacy. We have a law. They need to understand where the data is seated. You need to understand where your data is seated. Who has access to it? How long are you retaining it? And how do you dispose of it? So there are those issues around data protection and privacy that you'll also need to consider as part of your cloud computing strategy. Yeah, I think that answers it.
Yes, thank you so much. I was actually going to ask you what the regulator stand is on cloud on
Computing.
cloud computing. Yeah.
Mm.
Does that mean that if you were to go as a financial institution, if you were to have your data sitting locally with one of the local service providers, that you would not need to get the permission from the central bank?
No, that's not what it means. It means you have to get their permission.
Okay,
What Bank of
because it's
Uganda.
off-prem.
Yes, it's
Yeah,
off-prem. Yeah. And this is not colocation. This is, really the cloud computing services. Yeah.
yeah,
So it doesn't matter whether you're working with AWS in the US or with some company in India or brothers in Kenya or, a firm in Uganda, as long as you're going to outsource or work with a third party for your cloud computing service that you are not running, then you need to apply to the regulator before you need to. I think it's like 90 days or something. It's it, it, it's a long period. I was going to say it's ridiculous, but let me say it's a long period. Because a lot of the time, the needs, the business requirement, yeah, um, it's urgent. It's urgent. You're running today. You get a problem, maybe with your infrastructure in-house, and you realize, oh, we need to move, let's say, all our emails to a certain stack, or our backups to a certain to Microsoft Azure or AWS or Hosting, whichever provider you're working with. And then you have to first go to the regulator and give them 90 days notice. Yeah. Before they can come back to you, with an answer. So I guess there's room for engagement around these things. And the point is that it's good that the regulator is coming forward and the regulator is taking a position around this. And I guess it will keep improving, over time. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Thank you for that.
And uh, given the unique challenges and opportunities in African tech landscape, what strategies would you recommend for project managers to effectively develop and manage diverse teams and stakeholders across different culture and geographical contexts?
I think we spoke to that a bit.
I
Uh,
think
yeah,
I asked that question.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
so
spoke to that a
sorry about that.
bit.
So, how
It's
can
okay.
cybersecurity professionals in Africa effectively advocate for cybersecurity initiatives within organizations that may not uh, prioritize security as a top concern? I think this is like a very big issue, especially
Mm.
the fact that people will be like, since there is no incident, why should we pay for this tool and all that? So, how do you go about with that?
We are speaking budgets. How do we get money from our people, or how do we understand people? Sorry, how do our people understand, that they need to invest in cybersecurity? So I'll start from what we've just been speaking to around the cloud computing and the role of the regulator. When a regulator, if you're in an industry that is regulated, if it is telecom, financial services, any industry that is regulated, manufacturing, I don't know if manufacturing is regulated, but I'll speak to telecom and and financial services really. When the regulator comes out with guidelines, policy documents, anything of the sort, all licenses must comply. So if you are in the cyber security space, if you need to motivate for any activities, any budget, the first thing I'll tell you to do is look for regulation that supports what you're doing. If you're in a regulated space, look for a regulation, look for a policy document, look for a guideline. Once you provide that to your executives, they will comply. It's not even, it's not optional, it's not really optional. They will comply. And that is one of the most effective ways if you're in a regulated space. And we see this even in the financial services sector. So just this month, I was trying to look at the day-to-day stat. Just this month, there are some guidelines that have also come into play. The cyber and tech risk guidelines for the banks and financial service providers. And therein, the regulator is clearly stipulating what you must have at a minimum, you know, uh, from a cyber perspective, in terms of human resource. That's where the cloud computing thing, comes into play in terms of, your structures, in terms of reporting, audit. So if you want to be able to advocate for cybersecurity initiatives, go back and look at what regulatory compliance and legal obligations are in place that you can use. That's the first bit, the regulator, and that's usually the stick. But as a cybersecurity professional, you must be able to demonstrate the value. You must be able to show that whatever initiative you are proposing, this is across Africa really, whatever initiative you are proposing, must you must be able to demonstrate the value that it will bring to the business. Uh, if, for example, you're working let's say umeme. Umeme is an electricity, what are they? Are they still? Okay. Yes, they still are. Umeme are, in charge of the billing, for our electricity distribution of tokens. Um, if you are, for example, in an entity like Umeme, you need to show the core business really is to sell tokens, yeah, to sell electricity. Um, you need to be able to position and say, we need this tool or this solution because it's maybe going to prevent revenue leakage. Uh, if we are secure and we know who is accessing our platform and we know, our customer database is secure, these are the kinds of benefits that could come out of there. We could maybe stop leakages. We could be able to reach out to our customers more to drive them to, to pay those who are subscribing and are, dropping off at a certain point. You need to basically show the value that the initiatives you are proposing brings to the business. If you are, for example, in the mobile banking space, yeah, you need to show that if we can maybe implement, I don't know, two-factor authentication uh, for our customers, then we'll ensure that, it helps to mitigate, the risk of their money getting their money getting taken without their authorization. And, this will drive customer retention and maybe also attract new customers to come on board because our platform is, more secure. Um, the business will then listen. They'll be happy to motivate, to support. And this particular issue of the initiative showing business value, I remember I once had a boss who used to tell us, you need to go and engage with a business. This was now the technology team, You need to go and engage with the business people. The business people, they don't properly understand what you're doing. They know you support them, but they don't properly understand what you're doing, especially from a security perspective. So we need to empower our stakeholders. They need to understand the business value. And our cybersecurity goals really need to align with business strategy. So for me, it is align with business strategy and look for regulation that you can leverage. Yeah, those are the two things across Africa, I think, that we could use.
Yeah, I mean, I think, if you have to be, if you're regulated, you have to comply. So
Mm.
I guess it's an easy sell.
Yes.
Yeah.
In that domain, it becomes an easy sell. But for those who is not regulated, you need to demonstrate value. Because if you don't demonstrate value, there is no one who is going to approve your initiatives. And demonstrating value is not so difficult. You can see lessons, you can pick lessons from competitors. You could go to the news and see what's happening. It's basically knowledge sharing. You need to show people because people at the board level, people at management level, they're dealing with so much. There are so many requests that come. The budget is fixed or it's small, but there are so many competing priorities. So whoever demonstrates that there is value that they are bringing, and value is you're either bringing in money or you're saving us from problems or cutting costs. It's just one of those two. There's nothing else. Yeah, so you must be able to demonstrate that. And this it doesn't matter whether you're an NGO or you are in the bank or in a hospital. This is really it. And the thing is, if you don't push for this, when an incident occurs, you'll be the first person. When there's any incident, when there's a breach, they'll say, but Ronald, you're in charge. This is your docket. Yeah. How did you see this coming? Say, oh, I thought we never had budget. But who told you to think? It's not your budget. So you state your case, demonstrate the value, let them say no.
Yeah,
But they'll not say no if they understand. Yeah.
yeah.
But you can't say I told you so when that
Yeah, they
happens
can't say
anyway.
that.
No, you can't
You
say I
can't
told
say I
you
told
so
you
when
so when things go
when
wrong.
you're the one, yeah, when you're the ones at the forefront, you can't
Yeah.
say I
Yeah.
told you so.
So
Yeah.
I feel
But
like
but
Okay.
I,
there's also always this issue also of you're having, how do you communicate some of these things? Because you may say, yes, we are talking about, you gave an example of uh, evaluating risk, like let's say in terms of maybe saving us from a particular challenge which will come up in the future, or explaining the actual risk you are trying to solve. But if there's a situation where, like, let's say, a good example would be like, let's say, fishing. How do you sell it? How do you be like, okay, if we don't get fish, this is the type of issue we are trying to resolve. What is it going to bring us? How do you sell that in general?
um, I think one thing you need to be able to do is speak in very simple. You need to be able to communicate in a language that the people who are pulling the strings, the purse, understand. Not just that, but also all the other stakeholders. So it's really coming back to the stakeholder engagement and management also. Yeah, because we are here speaking about driving cyber initiatives within organizations across Africa. You need to be able to manage stakeholders and you need to be able to communicate in a language that they understand. So if, for example, you're going to, that's why I was giving the examples of, let's say, the electricity, regulator or umeme, for example. Um, you're not going to go and talk about about the detail of the technology. Yeah, you don't have to go and speak about the detail of the technology. You need to convince people about the value. Yeah, it's not about the features or this solution here. It can detect, I don't know, 5,000 transactions, every millisecond and things of the sort. And you'll be able to pick these anomalies. No, what they want to hear is we have the solution here. Last year, we maybe lost 1 billion to fraud or to cyber incident, for example. But if we deploy this, we'll be able to mitigate this threat by, maybe 30%. Yeah. So we need to speak in a language that the people we are communicating to understand. That for me, that is really what it is. If you engage a lot with vendors who come to sell cyber solutions, they'll speak so much about all the features. In a solution can have like 100 features, and they'll speak to all that. And at the end of the day, you don't really understand what value, yeah, because they pump you with so much, yeah. So I think this really speaks to us cyber professionals or technology professionals going back and learning the soft skills and being able to communicate clearly what we want to achieve. So it's an aspect of project management. And also you need to also kind of figure out when do you go and engage with someone? Yeah. I mean, now it's maybe end of the year. Most organizations maybe did their budgeting in October. And now you are the cyber professional and you're coming and saying, you know what, we need to have this tool. But where were you during the budget season? Why didn't you propose this then? Yeah. Or maybe you had an incident. It might be a small, or maybe you even had an incident out in the press. Last week was very busy. We were seeing a lot of things going on. Yeah. Maybe that is the ideal time. Use that opportunity to come and pitch, the cyber initiatives that you want. And there are good references at that point because everyone is kind of aware of what is going on. So you also, the timing when you come and propose some of these solutions or initiatives is critical. The timing, the language, and if it's a challenge, I say there are so many courses online. Let's go and study. Study the soft things, study communication. It will help us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. And one thing, I liked what you talked about the risk-based approach, because a lot of the business people also understand um, some of these things when you speak about the criticality and the risk. So you can come and say, this is what our risk register looks like, and these are maybe the top 5 risks. And what I'm proposing here, this initiative is going to deal with risk number 1 and 2. When you speak to that, it will also add value. But if you come and you're proposing initiatives that are dealing with risk 5 to 10, why should I pay attention to you? Eh? Yeah. So that risk categorization is actually very, very important. It's a very good way to position for cyber security initiatives. Yeah.
So in
And
terms
this,
of
and these are just my opinions. They are not.
these are your views
Yeah.
online.
These are my views. Yes.
So, how can organizations foster a culture of cybersecurity awareness and vigilance among employees to mitigate human error and common cyber attacks? This definitely boils down to what we, as SOC analysts, are able to do in terms of trainings and all that. How best can we do it?
Um, uh, I think at the beginning of this talk, I mentioned something. I didn't speak a lot about it, but I said, our human capital is really our biggest, for me, it's really our biggest line of defense in cyber. The technology is very important, without a doubt, but they always say as strong as your weakest link. Yeah. And a lot of the time it's going to be human. Yeah, a lot of the time. And I'm speaking about this from my experience in the banking and the financial services sector. 100% of the incidents I've seen, there's a human involved. Yeah, 100%, not 5%, not 10, 100% of the incidents that I've seen, there's always a human being. You may not know them, but they are there. Yeah. So this particular topic, and I'm very passionate about this particular topic of human capital development, it's very, very critical. Um, so what can we do? Number one, you have to be very organized. Have a plan, have an awareness plan. Let it be, sit and think through it and let it be comprehensive. Let it deal with, the things that we've spoken about. Look at your risks and then deal with the top risks. There is the Pareto's principle. It speaks, it's the 80-20 rule. 20% of your 80% of your problems may arise from 20% of I don't know how to put that. 80% of your problems might arise from 20% of your staff, for example. Yeah. Or 80% of your solutions may come from 20% of your initiatives. So think about your strategy and think about your training program comprehensively. Identify your pain points. And it's not just you, it is the business's pain points, but around cyber. And then design interventions around that. That is very important. And the interventions, I'm speaking about the training. Let the training be clear. Communicate in languages that people can understand. Yeah, don't make it very complicated. Yeah, you've spoken, for example, about phishing. Yeah, uh, you don't even have to do a talk, a 1 hour talk, on phishing. There are now tools you can run something and an exercise in your organization, and at the end of the day, you'll have these results that will show, oh, maybe 30% of our staff would probably have been phished. And when they learn, when they click on that link, and then you come back and explain, oh, this is what happened, and this is what we are testing, they will understand, oh, next time I shouldn't do this. So for me, that is one of the things. Design your programs, your training and awareness programs, uh, after categorizing your most important issues that you want to deal with. The other thing that I think is very, very important is creating an environment where people can come forward and speak or and whistle blow. Because we've seen so many incidents that have been, so every time you hear there's an incident that has occurred in whichever industry, a cyber incident, just know maybe there are like 10 other attempts that happened. Yeah. By the time you hear of one, just know there are like 10 other attempts that actually happened because the people are also organizing, to carry out these attacks. They don't just focus on one place. They have to spread their net, a bit wide. Or there are multiple people trying multiple organizations. And then, maybe they succeed with one because there's a vulnerability. And that vulnerability is usually a human being at some stage. Yeah. So you need to create an environment where people can come out and speak. Do not punish whistleblowers, for lack of a better word. Do not punish whistleblowers because we've seen so many incidents where staff come forward and they say, I was approached and I was offered 200 million or 300 or 50 million. I was offered maybe a visa to Canada, some wild things, and but I'm not going to do it. I've come here, but I'm also worried because now I've come to you. I don't know if you're going to go back and tell the fraudsters. Yeah. So you need to create an environment where your staff can come out and speak and encourage them to report. Then the other thing also that we can do as professionals is we can also communicate regularly. Let us provide feedback to our stakeholders. Yeah. When there are incidents or updates or threats, yeah, uh, let us update our stakeholders. So, for example, if you know that there is a breach, let's assume in the health services sector, and there is a breach on one of your competitors, pick it up and come and share with your staff and tell them, try and find out what happened there. Then pick it up and come and share and say, there was this breach, this is how it was done. So as an organization, we need to prepare, or to prevent this. So share updates. It's not just the training of the prevention, but also pick, stories. So my call is for the professionals to actually do some research, understand what threats are out there, what incidents are occurring in your space, and then come back and share with your stakeholders. And right from the board needs to be involved in this. It's not just the people at the bottom of the of the organization. Yeah, so for me, that is what it is around the people. I can speak about the people all day and interventions around that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. People are the probably the weakest link.
Mhm.
So as we wind up our questions, we I just want to touch on blockchain technology.
Mm.
What role do you see it playing in enhancing transparency and accountability in traditional financial systems? I know we don't have it here, but do you see it playing a role in that? And do you see it playing a role in reducing fraud? And also, what do you think the role of a regulator can be in the blockchain space?
Yeah. We don't have it here yet, but we're not going to run away from it. And we cannot bury our heads in the sand, you know, around the, the possible use cases, the benefits from leveraging blockchain as a technology. And I'm also aware that the regulator, um, I know they've made some statements around virtual assets and cryptocurrency. Yeah. But I know that there is also a lot of work going on around blockchain. Now, separating the two, the cryptocurrency and the virtual assets from the blockchain, I know there's a technical working group actually around blockchain, and different stakeholders are being engaged. And there's a lot of work that they are actually trying to do because they understand, I believe they understand, at least they're exploring the possibility of us adopting some adopting blockchain uh, to solve some of these fraud issues. And it can work. It can work because one, we know that on the blockchain, any records that are they call it is what it's immutable. Yeah, it's immutable. Any records that are added cannot be deleted unless there is consensus, amongst the different I don't know what they call them, stakeholders, on the blockchain. Yeah. So incidents where, for example, you have let's say telecom sector, for example, you have a call data record. I made a phone call to someone, maybe to Josephine, and then tomorrow we're in court, and that call record is no longer seen in the in the call data records of the telecom. Uh, those kinds of incidents should not, happen, will not happen. Or in the financial services sector, I have money and then I don't have money, because my account was breached, maybe my phone was stolen and they got access to my account or whatever, whatever it happened. At least we can be able to know that that record is not deleted. It can be tracked. Yeah. So that is one of the strong things. I think blockchain would really, that immutability is very, very important. The other thing that is very important is, and there we've been speaking about the record on the blockchain. And now here we have the aspect of KYC. It's also a very strong use case for blockchain that can actually prevent fraud. So what would happen here is, let's assume Ronald is getting enrolled by an institution, a financial institution that already is part of the blockchain. That is using uh, blockchain as an underlying technology, and there are 10 institutions on that platform. What would happen is that the very first time my identity is taken and registered on the blockchain, it gets shared with everyone. Yeah. So what that does is that the other 9 institutions don't have to go through the whole KYC process again because, I've been verified, I've been given a digital identity, and that can be used. Imagine how much that could help us in Uganda, not just in the financial services sector, but now everywhere you go. You go to an office, please leave your ID. You go to a hospital, we want to see your ID. School registration, ID. Bank, ID. Telecom, ID, So if we could just have that one digital identity that is seated on the blockchain, it would really help, with the whole eKYC. And that can also help, in fraud mitigation because you can track Ronald anywhere just based on his ID, whether it's in the financial services sector or manufacturing. Um, The other use case would be, I talked about eKYC, immutable records. I think the other use case would maybe be the smart contracts. And also this cuts across, it's not just about, the financial services sector, but, maybe lands. Um, I've sold you land today, there's a smart contract. It is clear that this title has been transferred from Ronald to Josephine. Yeah. Tomorrow you're not going to start seeing Ronald selling it to James. Yeah. Because of that immutability, but also smart contracts behind it. And also this happens with the financial services sector, loan application, applied for a loan, loan has been disbursed, and tomorrow you're saying, no, no, the bank didn't lend me money, you know, things of the sort. So there are those use cases, the eKYC, the immutability of records, the use of smart contracts. I think those are really strong use cases for the blockchain in Uganda and in Africa. And I know there are people who are putting in a bit of effort. There is a blockchain association, that are really putting in quite a bit of work around that. And I know there's also a technical working group, and I'm sure we'll be hearing some news coming out of that real soon, maybe in the next quarter or so. We'll be hearing some news for the financial services sector. Yeah.
Um, Definitely, blockchain has a space for it, but there's always that fear of it not being properly regulated. The fact that it is
Mm.
decentralized and all that. Do you
Mm.
think we can find a way of resolving that so that it can be mainstream, or are there any case studies on that?
Yes, they are. First of all, there are case studies, yeah, on that. There are a couple of countries that have adopted usage of the blockchain. So we need to remember, when we are speaking about blockchain, a lot of the time people confuse this with crypto, yeah, or with virtual assets. So the use cases for the blockchain are so many, and there are several countries that are already adopting, blockchain in its different, the different use cases, but also with crypto just being one of those particular use cases. For Uganda, I know uh, there is a discussion on regulating blockchain. There is a technical working group with different stakeholders. I know the banks were involved. I know PIXPA is involved. I know Ministry of Finance, the regulators, BOU, FIA, UCC, a couple of them. So I know that there is work that is being done around um, getting a position uh, on how we can move forward and fully, utilize, because we don't want to continue playing catch up. Maybe we shall go the sandbox route. Maybe we shall go the regulation route. Maybe we shall find space in existing regulation, yeah, that can then be used to leverage some of these. For example, maybe the NPS Act has a provision in the for payment service providers who want to build solutions on blockchain. So I'm sure we'll come up with something, and I know there is work that is going on around that. I can't speak to it authoritatively, but I know there is work that is going on around that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Ronald. I think we appreciate all the answers you've given us. I don't know if there've been questions from the audience. You can ask a few questions. I know our hour is up, but are there questions that have come through?
Yes, there's a question here about uh, who are the who are responsible to in terms of creating regulations concerning data protection and privacy.
So for regulation on data protection and privacy, first of all, I think all regulation, okay, for that particularly, I know there is the PDPO office, there's a personal data protection and privacy office, and they there is a data protection and privacy act also that is already in place, and regulations, you know, and there is already that framework. I know it was really built, maybe baselined on the GDPR was used as a baseline, and the laws and the regulations already exist, but those speak to personal data also. Yeah, I think there is work that needs to be done around non-individuals, because the Data Protection and Privacy Act is speaking a lot more to the individual, but not the non-individuals. And I know that there are also those discussions that are ongoing around that. But there's already, that's the PDP office specific to that particular question. Yeah. Maybe you should invite them because data protection and privacy would be something interesting also to speak to
Surely
from a cyber
we
perspective.
should.
For sure, yeah, very.
Yeah.
Uh, that is it from the question section. If someone else has a question, you can drop it down in the chat so that we can add them. But as we continue on, um, Josephine, can you take on the next question?
Yeah, sure. So I think what we're seeing in the cyber threats, they're getting increasingly sophisticated. And what, in terms of what what do you foresee in terms of what technologies and techniques which will be critical for effectively for effective fraud detection and prevention? I know this is it's one of those things we've talked about it. How yes, the cyber threats get sophisticated, tools get sophisticated, but cyber uh, um, threat actors also continue getting sophisticated. It's like you're playing cat and mouse. So I don't know if you see any emerging technologies and techniques which will help really keep up with the sophisticated cyber threats in your view.
I'll start with the technique and not the technology. Yeah. What I'll call the technique really is we need to have a revision of our laws that deal with cybercrime. Our laws are very, very weak. And I think those are some of the things, it's one of the things that encourages, cybercrime to grow and prosper in this country. Because if someone has stolen I don't know, 200, 300 million, they can walk away with maybe a 1 year sentence or maybe a fine. Yeah. Um, I've not even heard of those anyway. The laws are there, they are weak, and for some reason we're not successfully prosecuting cyber criminals. And for me, that is a very big issue, you know. They are known, many of them are known, but we are not successfully prosecuting them. So that's what I'm speaking to around the technique. And we have countries where they've gone back and looked at these laws and they they've made them stronger with stronger punishments. Countries like Nigeria, so that's from the technique perspective, and we can learn from them. And I know there are also initiatives that are going on from an industry perspective to try and work on strengthening these laws. But from a technology perspective or emerging technologies, for me, the big one is, of course, AI. You know, it's not in doubt. There is so much AI and machine learning, of course. Um, we can utilize, so many solutions because institutions, whether it is government or private sector, we have a lot of data, and we can utilize and understand and study patterns, around our data, our use, our possible breaches. We could use AI to study how some of these incidents occur, maybe reverse engineer some of them, and then prepare ourselves to attack. Because, sorry, not to attack, to defend. Yeah, to proactively defend when we have these breaches. Because a lot of the time, it's after the act. An incident has occurred, then we are now trying to understand, oh, who was behind this incident? But what if we can attack them in the middle of the attack? Yeah. And then the thing is this, the black hats, the cyber criminals, they practice every day. This is what they do. They wake up every day and this is what they do year on year. And for us, you don't have that kind of dedication and focus and tunnel vision. So we need to be able to leverage, um, tools like emerging technology like AI and solutions therein. Of course, we also need, support regulation around that. So that we're also not misusing it because, you may give Ronald the tools today, and tomorrow you start hearing other stories, you know. Um, so that, for me, that is one. The other bit is machine learning around the, data analytics also. And we are seeing the telcos deploying things like this because some of these tools, they've learned, they know what transactions look like on a Friday or on a Monday or on an evening. All this has been, so when there is anything that is out of the norm, they're able to detect. Yeah. And then they'll be alerting another institution or something. Oh, you seem to have something wrong on your side, you know? And if the telcos are doing this, then also other financial service providers need to be able to learn from them, see what they are using, what tools are they using, if they have trained, AI or bots to do this work, what are they? How can we train them also, on data? So for me, that is really from the emerging technologies perspective. That's what I'm thinking: AI and machine learning. And from the techniques, we need to tighten on the laws and work closely also with law enforcement, judiciary, you know, to put people to fight this scourge really. Yeah, yeah.
Um, Thank you, Ronald. Thank you to all the people who tuned in. Unfortunately, we had issues with LinkedIn, so we weren't able to get people on LinkedIn, but we are glad to still have streamed. We had a little bit of redundancy with YouTube, so at least people were
Mm.
able to view in on YouTube. But do you have any parting shots for us?
Um, for me, it's really I'll speak back to the people again. Yeah, for me, people in this whole cybersecurity, and this is why these kinds of discussions are really important, so that we can hear different views, get different messages out there around the cybersecurity landscape. It's really wide, but we need to invest in our people. Um, there are so many possibilities in this space. There are so many roles. We Everyone is really just learning, and the whole space is truly opening up. I'm now speaking about Uganda in particular. So the possibilities are limitless right now. And I'd like to encourage, everyone who is out there to get some interest in this space, put in some time, learn, share your experiences, share your knowledge, take this information back to your organizations, the lessons learned. Even if you just pick on the one thing from today, go and do a good capacity building program, you know, for your staff. Try and focus on your staff, encourage them to speak up. Um, that is really that from me. And I'd also like to thank you very, very, very much for being part of this talk today, especially on the 50th episode. I am, truly honored, and yeah, thank you very much for this whole initiative. That's it from me, really.
Well, thank you so much, Ronald. We highly appreciate your time and your great words of wisdom. I know you've got a experience which touches a lot of areas, so that's why we felt it's important that you come and talk to us, and that's why we asked you so many different um,
Yeah.
about different things. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much. We appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Jocelyn, and thank you.
thank you. Um, with that, we'll end here for